"Were you in love with him?" I asked my wife at 3 a.m., surrounded by photos I wasn't supposed to see. Her answer changed everything I thought I knew about our marriage. 18 hours. That's all the time we had left in the house. The moving truck was coming in the morning. Everything had to go in a box or go in the trash. No time to think too much about anything. That's why I was in the attic at 11 at night, pulling down old boxes we'd forgotten about. That's when I found the backpack. It was made of cloth, old, and faded, pushed way back behind some coats nobody had worn in years. I almost threw it straight into the giveaway pile, but I opened it instead. Inside was an old camera, the kind that uses film. It still had a roll inside, one that had never been printed. It had been sitting in the dark for who knows how long, about to get thrown away with everything else. I told myself I'd get the film developed, a surprise for Emily before we left. This house forever. I had no idea what I was about to find. First photo. A man laughing, walking down some old street with stone tiles. Good looking around my age. I didn't know him. Second photo. Emily crying. Not the soft, pretty kind of crying. The kind that makes strangers worried. I sat there a long time just looking at those two pictures. I told myself there was probably a simple reason. Maybe a friend, maybe a bad day that got caught on camera by mistake. I almost put the pictures down and went to bed. Almost, but I kept looking. Third photo, fourth, nothing strange. The man again, this time at a train station. Emily again laughing, this time whatever made her cry seemed to be over. I started to relax. Then I got to the fifth photo, and my stomach dropped. The man was wearing a wedding ring. I hadn't noticed it before. I went back and checked the other pictures. It was there in every one, once I knew to look for it. Plain and gold, shining in the light. He was married to someone, just not, as far as I could tell, to Emily. So who was he? I put the pictures down and told myself to sleep on it. I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Emily, staring at the ceiling, thinking about those 5 pictures over and over. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up trying to fall asleep and went back to the kitchen table. I went through the rest of the pictures slower this time. That's when the 6th photo stopped me completely. Emily, wearing a long white dress, fancy, her hair pinned up like it was some kind of special day. 6 years married to her, and I had never seen this man before. And here, in a roll of film I almost threw away, my wife was dressed up like this, standing right next to him. I checked the backpack again, my hands a little shaky now, and found a 7th photo hidden inside the lining. A hospital bracelet, photographed up close on purpose, like someone wanted to remember it. Emily's handwriting was on the back, but it was smudged. I couldn't read it. Married, maybe. Crying. A wedding. Dress. A hospital. By now I wasn't thinking about the moving truck anymore. I was trying to beat my own imagination, and I was losing. I went through the backpack one more time before the sun came up, looking for anything I had missed. I found a folded museum ticket tucked in a side pocket. On the back, in Emily's handwriting, "Never forget today." I turned it over twice, hoping for more. That was all it said. Under that, I found a crumpled receipt. 2 dinners, champagne, dessert. Way more money than a normal night out. Then a small hand-drawn map, a few towns circled in pen, no names, no notes. And pressed flat between 2 pages of a small notebook, I found a dried-up flower. It had been kept carefully so it wouldn't fall apart. Kept long enough that it had lost its color. Emily didn't usually keep things like this. Whatever this was, she'd held on to it on purpose. The strip of film had 8 pictures on it. I only had 7. 1 was missing. I searched everywhere. Again, nothing. Then, without really thinking about it, I looked inside Emily's purse. I've never done that before. I never have since. In the little zipper pocket where she keeps her cards, I found it. The edges were soft and worn, like she'd carried it around for a long time. Emily laughing, caught off guard, like she didn't even No, the picture was being taken. The man wasn't even in this one. Just her, happier than I remembered seeing her in a long time. Why keep just this one photo close to her every day, away from all the rest? The name of a camera shop was printed on the strap. I called them before Emily woke up. An older man answered, calm and slow. You said this camera belonged to a woman named Emily, he asked after I described it. And a man who was always joking. Around? My chest got tight. You remember them? Hard to forget. He always ordered the worst thing on the menu at the place next door. Called it his good luck ritual. They came in every week, every Saturday, like clockwork. Sometimes they'd rush the prints because they couldn't wait to see what they took. Were they? I started, hating myself for even asking. Together? The phone went quiet for a second. Depends what you mean by that, he finally said. I hung up with that sentence sitting in my stomach like a rock. Emily found me an hour later, sitting on the floor of our half-packed living room, all the pictures spread out, the notebook, the museum ticket, the receipt, the map, the flower, the photo from her wallet that I had no right to take. I watched her face when she saw it all. Not scared, sad, the old kind of sad, the kind that's gone quiet but never really left. I wondered, when you'd find those, she said. I couldn't stop myself. Before she even sat down, I asked the question I'd been thinking about all night. Were you in love with him? Silence. Emily looked hurt in a way I hadn't seen before. Not angry, just hurt, like I'd poked at something fragile. Then, quietly, no. She waited a second, long enough that I already regretted asking. I loved him. He was my family. She sat down across from the mess I'd made, and this time she didn't rush. His name was Daniel. Emily had taken one of those DNA tests as a joke gift from a coworker, not expecting anything. Instead, she got a message from a stranger saying he was her cousin. Their dads had been split up as kids because of some family fight nobody ever really explained. Once Emily and Daniel found each other, they couldn't stop looking for the rest of the family. He hugged me like he already knew me, she said. No awkward small talk. We just went straight to being family. He made her promise one thing the very first day they met, that they wouldn't stop after finding each other, that they'd keep going until they found everyone. The museum ticket wasn't really sentimental at first. The town's local history museum kept old church records. A worker there helped them find the name of an aunt nobody in the family had talked to in years. That's where the search really started. Never forget today, because that ticket was the first real clue after months of dead ends. She told me about the day they finally found that aunt. A 6-hour drive to a house neither of them had ever seen before. We get there, knock on the door, and she opens it, takes one look at us, and slams it shut. Didn't say a word. Just slammed it. I thought, well, that's it. 6 hours for nothing. I was already walking back to the car. Daniel knocked again. When she opened it the second time, he just smiled and said, that's okay. We'll come back next Saturday. Like getting a door slammed in his face didn't bother him at all. She started crying, Emily said. Right there in the doorway. She told us later that nobody had come back for her in 30 years. Everyone who ever left stayed gone. Daniel was the first one who didn't. That's where the flower came from. Her garden, the day she finally let them in for tea. The map was all the towns they circled looking for the rest of the family. He could never fold that map right, Emily said, almost smiling now. He'd just shove it in his pocket in a ball. I folded it properly every single time. She picked up the wallet photo, the one where Daniel wasn't even in the picture. This one's from later, she said, after we found a second cousin in a town we'd almost given up on, an old man who still remembered our grandfather's voice well enough to hum a song. I was standing outside after that, just happy, more than I knew what to do with. Daniel took this picture without me even noticing. I turned around and he already had the camera up. I asked him why. He said, because one day you'll forget what this felt like." She turned the photo over in her hands. He was wrong about that. I never forgot, but I carry it anyway, so I don't have to try. Daniel always kept a cheap disposable camera in his back pocket, just in case the good one ran out of film. He always ordered the worst coffee on the menu on purpose, like a joke only the two of them understood. He laughed at his own jokes before anyone else did, loud enough that strangers at other tables would start laughing too, without even knowing why. For the first time since I found that backpack, he sounded like a real person, not a threat. Someone I probably would have liked. "The ring," I said. "The wedding. His. He married a woman named Claire that year. I was a bridesmaid. A cousin he'd known less than a year, and he still wanted me standing up there next to him." That explained. The dress. The receipt was from the rehearsal dinner. Just the two of them going over what he wanted to say in his vows, because he trusted her opinion more than anyone's. "The hospital," I said. "His dad, my uncle, 91 years old, fell at home. Daniel brought me to meet him for the first time by his bed." She paused. "He cried when he found out his brother's granddaughter had come looking for him." "I thought that was everything," I said, looking at everything spread out on the floor. Emily shook her head. "Almost," she said. "There's one more thing." She reached into the notebook and touched the last date written on the last page. She closed the notebook, pressed her thumb on the cover, tried to say something. Couldn't. I waited. "This was the last one," she finally said. "Why?" She took a long breath. "Because 4 months after that photo, he stopped." She ran her finger over the cover like she was checking the date hadn't changed since the last time she looked at it. "I kept waiting for another Saturday. I already had the next town picked out. I had our coffee order ready. It never came. He got sick. Nobody saw it coming. He was 31. "I wasn't hiding a man from you," she said. "I was hiding how much it still hurts. I found a family, and I lost part of it, almost in the same year." "You could have told me," I said. "Any of it." "I know," she said. "I know that now." We didn't fix everything that night, but something changed. We kept the camera. Once a month, we pick one regular Saturday, no plans, no place to be, just the two of us and that old camera, the same way she and Daniel used to do it. One Saturday, it rained all day. Emily lifted the camera anyway, pointed it right at me. "Soaking wet on the porch steps? Seriously?" I said. "I'm soaked." "Exactly," she said. Click. That picture, once we got it printed, became my favorite one we've ever taken. Months later, I got another roll developed. Mostly normal stuff. Coffee, the dog, a bad haircut I'd been avoiding. And then one photo that stopped me for a totally different reason this time. Me, asleep on the couch, one arm hanging off the side, mouth open, the kind of picture you're supposed to delete. On the back, in Emily's handwriting, "This is what home looks like." I walked it over to the shelf, set it right next to the photo of Daniel laughing, the same photo that had scared me so much 18 hours before. I looked at both pictures side by side. One from a Saturday she almost lost forever. One from a Saturday we had just lived together. They belonged next to each other. I thought back in that attic that I'd just found an old camera and a roll of film nobody had developed. I was wrong. It wasn't the camera, it wasn't the film. It was a door she'd been keeping shut for years. We left that house the next morning. But one thing finally came with us: her story.